All right, today I want to emphasize something that we talked about with the 8.2 notes and the 8.1 notes. When we're talking about confidence intervals, there's a very specific part of the confidence interval that is known as the margin of error. And so this is something, again, we talked about. I want to emphasize the margin of error for any confidence interval is the part that you are adding and subtracting to and from the mean. So we have a formula here for margin of error. So margin of error has a margin of error. We sometimes see that represented with the letter E equals our critical value times sigma over radical n. Right, so if you think about in relationship to the length of your confidence interval, here we have a confidence interval. You can find the length just subtracting your upper bound minus your lower bound. And so you can see here the length of our confidence interval is 5.6. And so the margin of error then, the whole thing has a length of 5.6. The margin of error is half of that. So there's a margin of error here and the margin of error here. It's the same value. It's half the measure of the entire confidence interval. So the margin of error here would be 2.8. Similarly, here we have the margin of error. We have first you would need to find or know the length of the entire confidence interval, which here that would be 6.8. Leaving us with a margin of error here, this length here, and this length here would each be 3.4, half of 6.8. So as a refresher, when we were comparing the confidence and the precision, we have, for a fixed sample size, decreasing the confidence level. So you can see from 95 to 90, if you decrease the confidence level, you actually improve your precision. So that means the length of the confidence interval gets smaller. So for our example here, if we were solely asked to find the margin of error, we could do that without calculating the entire confidence interval. We could do that by just simply calculating, since we know the formula is this piece right here of the confidence interval formula, critical value times sigma over radical n. Our critical value here for a 95% confidence level is 1.96. Multiply that times our sigma over radical n, 12.1 over square root of 50. And that equals, so we would plug that in the calculator, 1.96 times 12.1 divided by the square root of 50. So 3.35 would be your margin of error. And similarly, you could say, okay, then what's the length of the confidence interval? You would just double that and say 6.7. So that's a little bit more detail, and hopefully you wrote those things down in your 8.2 notes about margin of error.